There's some seats in there. Oh, but you're up first, okay, yeah. Welcome to the February 26th, 2026 Southampton Town Planning Board Public Hearing. Welcome, everyone. We have two items on the agenda tonight. We're going to take number 2 first, and then the horse farm second. So, Gloria, do we have a quorum?
Chair Alfaro.
Present.
Vice Chair Finity is absent. Excuse me. Secretary is here. Board Member Glazer.
Present.
Board Member Mutu.
Present.
We have absent Board Member Fulham and Vice Chair Finity, and we are we're down one person, so we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let me just give you some security memos that in case of an emergency, there are 2 doors that exit here, go down either staircase and out the front door. Okay, so we're going to start with number 2, the Lighthouse Seafood project first. Do we have notice, Council?
We do, Madam Chair.
Great, thanks. So let's read this into the record. Why don't you read, stay there. Go ahead, George.
Please take notice that in accordance with local law number 14 of 2022, a public hearing will be held by the Southampton Town Planning Board on Thursday, February 26th at 6 p.m. at Town Hall 116, Hampton Road, Southampton, and via video conferencing to consider the pre-submission conference application entitled Lighthouse Seafood. The site plan is to legalize the construction of a 100 square foot raw bar, outdoor seating and parking in Resort Waterfront Business, RWB, zoning district, at 36 Lighthouse Road, Hamlet of Hampton Bays, Suffolk County Tax Map 900-374-2-17.1.
Great, thank you, George. Yes, please.
Hi. Susanna Herman and consultants for the applicant, Lighthouse Seafood. This is property 36 Lighthouse Road, Hampton Bays, just north of Honquag Bridge, across from the Coast Guard Station. It's formerly Corjay Seafood, if you might remember that, if you've been around for a long time. It's been Lighthouse Seafood for how many years? 5 years now. 5 years now. They've continued, it's been continuously a seafood market since the 1940s. This property was before this board in 2018 for site plan approval for an accessory ice house on the property. There's a pre-existing residence on the property, which was proposed to be converted to an ice house. That never happened. So currently, the property, but the 2 lots merged. So now we have vacant residence, a seafood shop, and then a parking lot between the 2 where they have put up a little shack. It's actually a little less than 100 square feet, a 10 by 10, a little bit less than that, raw bar, and 6 picnic tables. It's been used as casual dining. People come after the beach and in the evenings, and they buy food from the stand outside and sit at the picnic tables, or they go inside and get some food and come outside and sit. And there's also a lot of takeout that happens at the restaurant. Not at the restaurant, at the seafood market. So a lot of people get it to go. Some people sit at the picnic tables. But we're seeking to legalize this use on the property, recognizing that we're going to need site plan approval, as well as a wetland permit, and probably a special exception use approval for the project. I believe we have adequate parking. There's currently 21 formal parking spaces, plus more in the gravel parking area. If needed, we could add more between the old house and the bulkhead there.
There's ample spots there that there's a
Yeah.
fence that can come down and we can add parking at any given moment there.
Can you give me your name for the record?
Deirdre Hanrahan, the owner of Lighthouse Seafood.
Thank you. And are you Scott?
Yes, Scott
Okay.
Cronish. Deidre's husband.
Great, thank you. I think we know the area and the application. Are there any questions on the part of the planning board? Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this application? No? Okay. Is there anyone on Zoom? Kevin?
No one on Zoom.
Okay. So this is a pre-submission, so we'll close it with a 30-day written comment period. Okay? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Motion for that? George? Motion?
Yep.
Second?
By Gloria?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, 4 in favor, 2 absent, and 1 vacancy. Okay, on to the North Edge Staples LLC. Now, I do have a sign-in sheet. I know maybe some of you didn't get a chance to sign it, but everybody will have an opportunity to speak. Please look at the size of the room. So if someone is speaking, who's making a point before you, maybe you can just keep it shorter so that we can get to hear everybody.
Wait, check the other
There's about
side.
20 people on Zoom.
And we have some more, and 20 people on Zoom.
Okay. Do we have sufficient notice?
We do, Madam Chair.
David, do you want to read
Ready?
it into the record?
Please take notice that in accordance with Local Law 14 of 2022, a public hearing will be held at the Southampton Town Planning Board on Thursday, February 26, 2026 at 6 p.m. at Town Hall, 116 Hampton Road, Southampton, and via video conferencing, to consider the site plan special exception application entitled North Edge Stables 2 LLC. The application proposes the development of a private horse stabling facility on the subject 29.976 acre agricultural reserve as created by the subdivision map titled Tater Fields, to permit the construction of a 19,152 square foot horse stable with 26 stalls, a 21,000 square foot indoor riding arena, a 14,480 square foot garage, 2,272 square foot one-story structures, each with 2 units with 2 bedrooms each to be used for agricultural labor housing, a 36,000 square foot outdoor arena with gazebo, a 60-foot diameter horse walker, 11 100 by 150 square feet paddocks, open fields, associated parking with a single gated access from Scuttle Hill Road located in the CR 80 zoning district and within the agricultural and aquifer protection overlay districts and within the archaeological sensitive area on the property located at 819 Lumber Lane, Hamlet of Bridgehampton, Suffolk County Tax Map number 900-51-2-4.8.
Thank you. Wayne?
Good evening, board members. Wayne Bruin, O'Shea, Morsinsic and Bruin, Southampton, New York, on behalf of North Edge Stables 2 LLC. Tonight with me is Gabby Morris, principal of the applicant. The applicant is in contract to purchase the subject property from Stephen Klein. That is stated in our application. The property, without repeating what was stated in the notice, is on the southeast corner of Scuttle Hole Road and Lumber Lane. It's known as 819 Lumber Lane in the tax rolls. We're in the hamlet of Bridgehampton. The parcel is a rectangular-shaped parcel, approximately 760 feet by 1,715 feet, and it contains 29.976 acres. As noted, the property is part of the agricultural reserve area on the subdivision map of Tater Fields, which this board approved and was filed in 2002. If you recall, In 2008, this board approved a transfer of property between Stephen Klein and Channing Daughters Winery to the east to convey a portion of that ag reserve to Channing Daughters so they could build a storage facility for their winery. The zoning, as indicated, we're in the CR 80 zoning district, the agricultural overlay district. The property is encumbered with a purchase of development rights agreement. That was with the town, which was recorded in 2002, simultaneously with the filing of the map. We provided a copy of that. Just as a note, it is not an enhanced development rights agreement, which you see nowadays. The premises, the existing conditions of the premises, it's currently an open and mowed field, which is used by Stephen Klein for pasturing, exercising, and training of his horses. The premises is surrounded by approximately 5-foot horse paddock fence on its entire perimeter. As you probably seen on the maps and may have observed, the property is gently sloping from the north to the south. It's being maintained and it's grass and mowed in that condition. There is a gate for access on Lumber Lane, approximately in the center of the property. And there is also another gate on the easterly side of the property where there's a conditional access easement across the Channing Daughters Winery, which Mr. Klein uses to ride his horses through the winery from his house and stable on the east side of the winery to this property to exercise his horses. That was part of the agreement when they did the transfer of property. The application before you is, we're requesting special exception permission and a farmland construction permit to allow a horse farm and horse stabling facility with associated housing for agricultural labor. As indicated, the application includes a 19,152 square foot horse stable that will stable 26 horses and where the horse calculations under the code permit 41. We're also proposing a 21,000 square foot indoor riding arena and where the code allows a maximum of 24,000. There's also a garage maintenance facility of 14,480 square feet, and there's also, for the agricultural housing, the design is 3 one-story buildings, each with 2 units, with each of those 2 bedrooms. So as mentioned, the application includes our petition, special exception permission. I'm not going to belabor you tonight with the audience here. The petition goes line by line, each of the general standards as well as the specific conditions and safeguards. And it shows how this application is in compliance with not only the town code, but also it's consistent with the terms of the development rights easement. As our application has indicated, the activities in connection with the proposed horse farm will be the raising, breeding, boarding, and training of show jumping horses, something this board has seen in many other applications. What is not proposed here is any kind of facility open to the general public, the letting of horses, a horseback riding academy. In particular, although it's allowed, or you may allow it under special exception, it's not permitted under the easement. There were questions raised as to the consistency with the easement, and again, during the pre-application stage, I provided this board with an extensive letter dated September 10th that indicates how we are consistent with the purchase of development right easement. Just generally want to give you 2 highlights. Number 1, the agreement specifically and expressly permits equestrian rights, which are defined as the right to use and erect structures for the purpose of boarding, breeding, raising, and training of horses or other equines. The agreement also provides for housing for agricultural labor, which is defined in the agreement as dwellings and group quarters used to provide housing for regular and essential employees and their immediate families who are primarily employed in connection with the subject farm operation. Just as an aside, the town agreements as they are and they have been were all created in the late 1990s when I was assistant deputy town attorney. I was requested to create a form, modeled it after the Conic Land Trust form, and the town continues to use it. The form that was there when we started this took on a different turn after the courts in the Equus Associates versus the town of Southampton decisions were made, not only by the Second Department, Appellate Division of the New York State Supreme Court, but also the federal courts. And I would suggest the board, given the issues that have been raised, might go back and look at those cases. The federal court, in fact, gives a line-by-line, blow-by-blow description of how and where and how that application. Basically, in the Equus case, the argument that was being raised was the town purchasing development rights, which were to be open fields, or were they buying development rights for agricultural purposes? In the end, the court said agricultural purposes, and more specifically related to the raising, breeding, and boarding and training of horses were permitted. And that's why the town's development right easements and why the town code specifically identifies and addresses horse farms. Similarly, in the late 1990s, the town was considering purchasing the development rights from the Zalewski farm. To do so, the town, what was being offered by the state ag and markets and the United States Department of Agriculture were certain grants, which the town took advantage of. When we sent the proposed development right easement to the state and the federal government, they turned around, gave comments, but the most significant comment was, we must include housing for agricultural labor because it's an integral element of agriculture. And that was consistent with, among other things, a Court of Appeals decision, which specifically in 1977 recognized that housing for agricultural labor is part and parcel of agriculture. So when we look at the town code, which in this case we're asking for special exception approval for the horse farm, horse stabling facility, and the housing for agricultural labor, will show that our petition and our application is consistent and conforms with all the standards and criteria under the code, and we believe we demonstrated that. But we also brought to this board's attention, not only at the pre-application stage, but with our final application, that this application is consistent with how this board has treated other applicants for horse farms throughout the town, some with and some without the town development rights easements, but other maybe open space easements with planning board approvals and the like. So I want to emphasize that, again, we are consistent with, we provided that analysis, and we'd hope you go back and look at that. With respect to how we got to designing this application, one of the elements was the client is proposing to stable show jumping horses. And these are horses that are not, let's call it, inexpensive. And they require a lot of attention and management and grooming, which case, based on our analysis and based on what the client is looking for, the customarily one groom cares for 3 show jumping horses. In this case, with 26 horses, we have approximately 8 or 9 grooms will be needed to be employed on this property. In addition, there'll be other employees, including a property manager, a trainer, and ground maintenance workers. We believe there could be upwards to maybe 14 or more employees. As such, and given the lack of housing and availability, particular in the town, and to avoid the commute, just like other horse farms this board has approved, they're looking to provide housing for those agricultural laborers. And we believe, and we can demonstrate that it will comply to not only the special exception standards, but the definition that's provided in the easement, which is more stricter than the town code. With respect to the design, the planning board at the pre-app stage requested, and the client agreed to provide only one access point to Lumber Lane rather than two. It's approximately 820 feet south of Scuttle Hole Road, opposite a horse farm across the street, the Amaryllis Farm Equine Rescue Operation. I'm not sure this board reviewed it yet, but that's exactly across the way from where this application and access will be. We provided a calculation for parking and the amount, even though there's nothing in the code specifically for a horse farm, we believe we provided ample parking. I think the board even thought maybe we provided too much parking, but we can revisit that. As far as the premises design parameters, I know this board has looked at that, and we mentioned this at the pre-application stage. I mentioned earlier that the premise was previously graded, planted in grass, and remains an open mowed field used for pasturing and exercising horses now, and surrounded by the paddock fence. Aside from the building areas, which constitute less than 10 acres of potential disturbance, the condition of the premises will remain virtually undisturbed, except for paddock fences. As shown on the proposed plan, the proposed layout and design of the horse farm is intended to provide a substantial separation from nearby residences. If you look at the application, the aerial photograph, the nearest residences to this property are to our south and across the street on Scuttle Hole Road and to the west of Lumber towards the center of the property. So giving those constraints, just as this board has tried to balance other applications, we try to be mindful of our neighbors and the fact that that's what the code provides separation from residences when it comes to agricultural uses, including animal husbandry. They're looking for separation, manure storage, and the keeping of horses and other animals from residences. So given that, our client designed this property with a substantial buffer to the south. It also provides a substantial buffer open area to the north, as well as a buffer along Lumber Lane and open paddock areas along the east. Along the east, you know, is the Channing Daughters Winery, which is an agricultural use. As mentioned, is already experiencing the horse farm activities with Mr. Klein's use. The three agricultural labor buildings, the code provides minimum setbacks. At very least, we have to maintain 200-foot setbacks from property lines with buildings. So given that under the code, you can see that, you know, you start to limit where buildings and structures can occur. The property is served with public water and fire hydrants. Just want to remind you, if I'm available, any particular questions or details, but I tried to give you just a brief summary here. But basically, the layout and design, paddock area is designed to protect the nearby properties and are consistent with all the other horse farms that you've approved. So if you have any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Well, thanks, Mr. Bruin. We have quite a few people to speak, so.
Sure.
So I'm going to, this was a sign-in sheet. I'll call people in the order they signed in. Plus, we have a substantial number of people on Zoom. So the first person here is Scott Furman. Furman. F-U-R. F-U-R. Looks like an O.
I don't write well. Good evening. I'm Scott Furman, Sive Paget Roselle. We're an environmental law firm in Manhattan. and we represent the adjacent property owners to the proposed farm. Make no mistake, this is a commercial operation, and the petitioner, the applicant rather, seeks to convince you that a residential component is necessary. We'll start with that. That's the low-hanging fruit. A residential component is not necessary. I live in Southampton. I have trade people come to my home to work who live nearby and afar. They work during normal working hours, 6 a.m. at times to 6 p.m. They commute. It is not necessary for them to live in my home. It is not necessary for anyone to live on a farm where the horses sleep at night. And that'll be the case here. However, this is a commercial facility. Mr. Bruin has pointed out that there was a subdivision approval which created the agricultural reserve. That approval has a condition. The condition is that there shall be no dwellings on the agricultural reserve. No dwellings. My clients bought their homes, each respectively, for millions and millions of dollars after the subdivision was approved and after the development rights agreement was put in place. And the development rights agreement, while Mr. Bruin is correct about its basic tenets, also has some very specific tenets. There shall be no commercial use. The applicant stated in the prior meeting that we attended that this will be a commercial facility. Yes, it's private, as are many commercial operations, but it's still a commercial facility. Look at the size of it, and don't be convinced that any one of us has 28 horses that we will ride ourselves and with our nearest and dearest friends. There's an intent here to build an equine commercial facility, not an agricultural facility. It does compare with other approvals you've given, and it compares well in some cases and poorly in others. I'd encourage you not to look at it in that context, but rather to look at it in the context that my clients look at it, your neighbors. They bought knowing that this field would either be farmed, hunted, or used for the bridle path that is on it for recreational equine purposes. That was the clear intent of the development agreement. I understand and agree with what the case law says. We've reviewed the cases, but the case law doesn't permit this application. It's specific to its terms. Another important consideration is that I know that the planning board deemed the application complete. Our firm spends our daily bread on SECRA, and I can assure you that you're going to hear that this is not a type 2 action. There is an exemption under SECRA for agricultural, but this is not agricultural. This mimics agricultural. This can be construed or conceived to be agricultural when you view it from afar. But when you look at the details, you're going to find that what this is a commercial equine facility. Now, don't get me wrong. My clients have horses and enjoy them and invite the applicant to be our neighbor. But we invite the applicant to be our neighbor on a development not of this scale and that does not require dwellings to be constructed or used. This community is bucolic, and the people who buy into Bridgehampton do so because of the setting. I am a long-term Southampton resident, 1965. I know, I don't look that old, but I am. And I've always come up to Bridgehampton, and spend time in the facilities. My daughter learned to ride horses in Bridgehampton, and we love it. But we love it for its character, and so do my clients who spent millions and millions of dollars, as the applicant, no doubt, is intending to do, for a type of community that has been promised by the subdivision approval, by the 500-foot buffer from the properties to the south, and from the development rights agreement. I know I'm limited to 3 minutes. There's a lot of people who'd like to speak, so we have also provided, Madam Chairperson, to the board written comments, and we'll provide a binder for you of the comments you'll hear tonight.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask everyone to be respectful of time so that we can get to hear everybody. So the next person is Maggie McDonald, please.
Hi, my name is Maggie McDonald. I'm also a partner at Cy Paget and Roselle. We represent the Bridgehampton Conservation Alliance, the group of neighbors that Scott mentioned. And I'm here to talk about SECRA. It's clear from the applicant's submissions to the planning board that the plans they've provided have been incomplete and misleading and have resulted in the planning board's misapplication of applicable law to deem the project complete without environmental review. You were poised to require SECRA review in November. Your November 20th work session meeting agenda included a draft resolution finding that the proposed physical alteration of the site exceeded 10 acres, and the project met the criteria of a type 1 action under SECRA. That would have been an appropriate resolution consistent with applicable law. The applicant's own October 2025 plan specified 23.8 acres of disturbance, and then the applicant submitted a new plan, which was the same plan, purporting to show a limitation of disturbance just shy of 10 acres. We note that the appropriate definition to be applied pursuant to SECRA relates to physical alteration of land. The new plans provide a calculation that intentionally omits areas that will obviously be disturbed and physically altered. The applicant must be required to submit plans accurately depicting all areas of physical alteration so the planning board can determine whether the proposed development is a type 1 action requiring environmental review. As you can see from the plan that we've prepared, we believe it clearly is. The plans also must be submitted in a format that is legible when downloaded from the planning board's website, which is not the case with the current application materials. In accepting the applicant's self-serving redrawing of the site disturbance boundary, the planning board ignored the expansive definition of physical alteration both under SECRA and under the town code. The definition is non-exhaustive and lists examples, including vegetation removal, demolition, stockpiling materials, grading and other forms of earthwork, excavation or trenching, application of pesticides, herbicides, or other chemicals, draining or dewatering, paving, construction of buildings, structures, or facilities, and extraction, injection, or recharge of resources below ground. As shown in the figure I've presented here, the physical alterations excluded from the applicant's calculation total at a minimum over 5 acres, bringing the minimum total physical alteration pursuant to SECRA to over 14 acres. The applicant's current plans show a disturbance boundary immediately adjacent to the workforce housing. Significant earthwork is required beyond that boundary to install underground sanitary systems. Likewise, there is no question that the paddocks require excavations for fence installation and plantings and will likely require grading, soil augmentation, and compaction to ensure safe conditions for the prize show jumping horses we've heard about tonight. The applicant's drawings fail to include a cut-fill diagram showing the aerial extent of grading. All site grading and preparation, including the paddocks, is squarely within the definition of physical alteration under SECRA. Finally, multiple referral agencies have identified information that's missing from the application that must be provided before the application can move forward. In light of the intense public interest in the outcome of this application, the weather conditions that have made travel treacherous this week, although thank you to everyone that's here, the planning board must provide additional public hearings and sufficient time for submission of written and oral testimony. It's imperative that the public hearing be extended to allow for the public review and comment on the requested information, including revised plans showing the true extent of physical alteration, including necessary grading activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kevin Williams?
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Kevin Williams. I'm principal planner for GZA Geoenvironmental, an engineering, environmental science, and planning firm. I'm here on behalf of Bridgehampton Conservation Alliance to address the secret classification on the North Edge Stables 2 project at 819 Lumber Lane. Our position is pretty straightforward. The Type 2 classification, as noted previously, is incorrect and really needs to be reconsidered. Let me explain why. So we've already went over the project details, but I'm going to restate them. What's being proposed here is not a small farm. This is commercial equestrian enterprise, a 26-stall horse stable, 21,000 square foot indoor arena, 36,000 square foot outdoor arena, a nearly 15,000 square foot garage, 6 for workforce houses, 48 parking spaces, paddocks, and all the infrastructure that goes with that, all on a vacant parcel in CR 80 district within the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. The project requires a special exemption permit, a discretionary action, yet it's been classified as if no environmental review is required at all. So I'm not here personally to oppose this project. I just think that the community deserves the proper environmental review, given the type of site that we're talking about and the constraints that are present. So the classification of Type 2 is wrong for some of the reasons that were already mentioned. I'm going to elaborate a little bit. The board classified this project under the Agricultural Farm Management Practices exemption. That exemption was designed for routine farming activities, plowing fields, rotating crops, managing livestock on active farms. It was intended to cover a ground-up, it was never intended to cover a ground-up commercial-scale equestrian facility with arenas, workforce housing, and parking lots. So 2 points on this. First, this is a commercial enterprise, not a traditional agriculture. The applicant's own petition describes horse boarding and training, which very much implicates to me the equivalent of a riding academy. This is a commercial business and not an agricultural use subject to the exemption. Second, the property is not in New York State Agriculture District. It's a preserved district under the Purchase of Development Rights Agreement, which specifically, exclusively prohibits commercial, industrial, and residential uses. That agreement is a significant constraint on the permissible use of the subject property, and the board should, when examining that, should consider that when examining it and not bypass it. So on this 10-acre threshold, as is shown in this exhibit, and just to reiterate, the applicant shows 9 acres of disturbance. That's right at the doorstep of 10 acres for a level 1 or type 1 threshold under State Environmental Quality Review Act. But the 9-acre figure is materially deficient. It omits, specifically in the plans omit this, and also as has been examined as well, there's been no septic or sewer system analyzed by the town. It has not been submitted yet, and the drawings actually do not appear to correctly show the spatial arrangement of that septic system in its entirety. So it omits the septic system in the leaching field, the paddock area, which is over 4 acres in and of itself, and would require significant grading for the equine use, landscaping areas, perimeter fencing. When all the considerable area are looked at, we're talking at over 14.5 acres at the minimum. So both the New York State DEC State Environmental Quality Handbook and your own town code define alteration or disturbance broadly to include grading, clearing, excavation, filling, and construction. Every one of these omitted categories falls squarely within these determinations. When properly accounted for, the total disturbance will exceed 10 acres, triggering a mandatory type 1 classification. And why is this important? So 231 tons of horse manure at an average of, say, 35 to 50 pounds per horse per day over the sole source aquifer that supports your community's drinking water. And Suffolk County Health Services has confirmed its wastewater application has never been submitted on this application. Major stormwater impacts. The town's own highway superintendent has already flagged these drainage concerns. Archaeological sensitivity. The site has been flagged by New York State Historic Preservation Office as being potentially archaeologically significant. And no Phase 1A study has even been provided to look at the historic documentation on the site. Traffic, noise, odor, potential habitat, and community character impact are all in our purview here. In a rural residential neighborhood, none of this has been studied. Type 2 classification just doesn't skip a procedural box. It deprives the board of the environmental information you need to make an informed decision on the special exemption. So All we're requesting here is the board to rescind that type 2 classification and deem the application incomplete. Reclassify the project as a type 1 action or at a minimum an unlisted action, given the special conditions associated with the site, sensitive ecological concerns. Require the applicant to prepare a full environmental assessment form so that this board and the community have the information needed before any approvals are provided. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, can you hold any response? Also, I don't want to impose a 3-minute limit, but we're going to have to be mindful of how long we're speaking, so please, thank you. The next person is Sarah Sklar.
Good evening, members of the Planning Board. My name is Sarah Sklar, Senior Environmental Planner from GZA with over a decade experience in environmental planning throughout Long Island. I'm here on behalf of the Bridgehampton Conservation Alliance. There are several environmental concerns demonstrating why this project requires a full environmental review. Like the rest of Long Island, the sole source of drinking water for the town of Southampton is underground in its aquifers. The project site is located within the town's Aquifer Protection Overlay District, as well as the Suffolk County designated South Fork Special Groundwater Protection Area. A 26-horse commercial equestrian operation has the potential to generate substantial quantities of animal waste, which can serve as significant sources of nitrogen, phosphorus, pathogens, and other contaminants if not properly managed. These impacts may be compounded by additional site activities, including the use of a residential septic system, fertilizer application, and stormwater runoff for impervious and disturbed areas. To fully understand the combined effect of these resources, a cumulative nitrogen loading analysis should be prepared to evaluate the total nutrient inputs associated with the proposed horse farm. In addition to groundwater impacts, impacts on potential cultural resources need to be further evaluated due to the site's location in an archaeologically sensitive area, as defined by New York State Historic Preservation Office, also known as SHPO. SHPO generally recommends Phase 1A architectural assessments for sites in archaeologically sensitive areas unless prior ground disturbance can be documented. SHPO does not consider agricultural activity to be substantial ground disturbance. The scale of earth disturbance for the proposed building foundation, site preparation, utility, and septic installation could irreversibly destroy archaeological resources that have never been investigated. A Phase 1A archaeological assessment should be required before any ground disturbance is proposed. The project will dramatically increase impervious surfaces at the project site for buildings, arenas, parking, and driveways. Paddock soils can become compounded from equine use, effectively behaving as impervious surfaces. This means more runoff carrying sediment, nutrients, and pathogens into the stormwater system and ultimately to the groundwater. A commercial equestrian facility generates traffic that is qualitatively different from typical uses, including trailers, feed and breeding deliveries, farrier and veterinary vehicles, staff commuters, and patrons for events. A traffic impact study should be performed to determine that surrounding roadways have capacity to handle additional traffic. The site is currently undeveloped and supports existing vegetation and habitat. The town's Agricultural Advisory Committee has identified this as prime agricultural soils that would be irreversibly destroyed. A review of the New York State DEC Environmental Resource Mapper indicates that the site is within a significant natural communities check zone and a rare plant and animal check zone. An ecological assessment should evaluate potential impacts on natural resources. Overall, the environmental concerns I just outlined are directly related to the project and need to be studied in more detail. We are asking that you rescind the Type 2 classification, reclassify the project appropriately, and require at minimum a full environmental assessment form from the applicant. Thank you.
Thanks. Can you submit, please, thank you. Can you submit, asking you to just submit your comments. We're going to have to time now. We're never going to get through hearing from all of you. The next person is Pamela Harwood, Bridgehampton Civic.
I'm going to have to speed read here, sorry.
Please.
My name is Pamela Harwood.
And you
and
could
I'm the
submit to
president-
us. You could submit it in writing, too, if you can't get through it all.
Okay,
We'll read
thanks.
it.
My name is Pamela Harwood. I'm the president of the Bridgehampton Civic Association, and I am presenting a petition today with the names of 265 Bridgehampton and other Southampton town residents asking you to deny this application. We've never received so many names. In 2001, the town of Southampton pledged $1,867,800 from the Community Preservation Fund for the purchase of development rights to this land for it to remain an agricultural reserve. According to Town Code 224.1 regarding the transfer of development rights, certificate and programs, purpose and intent, through adoption of the 1999 Comprehensive Plan Update, the Town Board has determined that the natural, scenic, and/or agricultural qualities of open land are important to the town and should be protected. I think we can all agree that open land does not include the massive amount of development and land disturbance proposed. The July 31st, 2001 Purchase of Development Rights Agreement states that it is the policy of the town of Southampton to preserve prime agricultural soils, to protect the scenic, open space, and rural character of the town and its resort and agricultural economy. The applicant and her attorney would like you to ignore that nearly all the goals in purchasing the development rights would be undermined by the intensive development requested. It goes on to say that the subject area in its present scenic, agricultural, and open space condition has substantial and significant value as an aesthetic and agricultural resource by reason of the fact that it has not been subject to extensive development. There you have it. The goal of purchasing the development rights was to keep the land in the state it was in 2001 and in which it remains today. It would lose those qualities if you approve this application. Yes, equestrian rights are allowed, but the traditional pastime of grazing horses and riding through neighboring fields does not result in forever losing undeveloped open land. When the 2002 Planning Board approved the subdivision and the establishment of the agricultural reserve, it was described as a conservation opportunity because the town would purchase the development rights. A fast-track process for the conservation opportunity was set in motion and a public hearing was not required. The subdivision was approved with the declaration of covenants. Number 1 on this list is no dwellings to be constructed on the agricultural reserve. By definition, the term dwellings can exclude not only worker or owner housing, but also horse stables. I respectfully urge this planning board to deny the application and to be guided by the 2001 Purchase of Development Rights Agreement and the 2002 Planning Board's approval stipulations, as well as the original grantor's wish in selling the development rights to the town to keep it as open land. Thank you very much.
Peter,
I'll give the petition later on.
yeah, okay, great. Peter Feder or Fedler? Fader.
Hi, I'm Peter Fader. I'm a treasurer of the Bridgehampton Civic Association, and I happen to live right up the street from this farm. I want to address some of the fiscal side of this issue. In 2001, the taxpayers of Southampton purchased the development rights of what was called then Tater Fields. This allowed for the preservation of open land, scenic vistas, which have always been very important to all of us. In return, the owners of the property were given a significant reduction in their property taxes, with the rest of us kicking in the difference. And over the past 25 years, the new owners have honored the spirit of the agreement. They maintain the open space, the scenic vistas, the quality of the soil, and while there was horseback riding on the property, it never involved the types of structures and commercial activities that are being proposed by this. Now, the new prospective owner wants to pocket the favorable tax treatment while proposing this construction of riding rings, large buildings, stables, and living quarters for employee housing, under the guise of employee housing, which in all likelihood will remain empty for the better part of the year. The planning board approval of Taterfield subdivision at the time the development rights were purchased were specifically states that no dwellings should be constructed on the property. So this should be an easy no for you, frankly. The planning board cannot continue to allow the violation of the covenants on this and other ag reserves in Bridgehampton, while at the same time allowing the said owners to continue to enjoy the favorable tax treatment that the rest of us continue to subsidize. This is not good fiscal management, and the planning board should not enable it. I urge you to take a closer look at this and help the taxpayers of Southampton get what we paid for, because this is not what we're paying for.
Thank you, Peter. Meredith Berkeley.
Good evening, members of the Planning Board. I'm Meredith Berkowitz, also of the Bridgehampton Civic Association. I listened to Mr. Bruin tonight, and to hear him tell it, Equus would mean that agriculture is the only conservation goal that matters in this town. While agriculture is certainly an important goal of New York State and Southampton, it is not the only goal. Conservation of our open space and bucolic rural vistas is equally important and specifically mentioned in our master plan, Town Code sections 330, 50, and 51, which creates reserves like this by subdivision, in the standards for the use of CPF funds to purchase development rights, and in New York GML 247 on conservation easements. To accept Mr. Bruin's arguments based on one statement taken out of context in an entire line of reasoning in Equus would be to say only that agriculture and the right to farm matters, or that agriculture and right to farm somehow trumps these other conservation goals, and that's just simply not the law. Not in Southampton, not in New York State, and especially when this parcel is not in the Ag Markets District. It is in the town's agricultural overlay, but it is not in the state agricultural markets district. A very important distinction. I've heard a lot of discussion about enhanced versus standard development rights. It's irrelevant because here we have an actual agreement and restrictive covenants that tell us what is and isn't allowed on this property. Mr. Bruin and the pre-submission report focused exclusively on Article 4 of the easement, the equestrian rights, failing to address entirely the restrictions of Article 3, specifically Section 307. By law and in Article 4 itself, these provisions must be read together and consistently. So let's do that. Section 307 prohibits all commercial uses, not just a riding academy. There is one limited exception for the raising of crops, livestock, and livestock products as defined by the AML at that time. The definition of crops, livestock, and livestock products has always been in Section 301(2)(e). But 10 years after Equus, but before this easement was recorded, New York saw fit to define commercial horse boarding and farm operations elsewhere. If the parties intended to allow commercial horse boarding or horse farm operations for this property, which are different than the raising of horses, they had months to amend the easement before it was recorded to add those extra exceptions, and they chose not to. Case law does not allow Mr. Bruin to now come in 25 years later and supplant his judgment for that of the parties at that time. Section 307 also prohibits all residential uses. Paragraph 4 of the Declaration of Covenants prohibits any residential or residential accessory structure, and your own planning board approval of the Tater Tot subdivision prohibited any dwelling. And thanks to the courts in First Blue and 625 Better Lane, we now know that ag labor housing, while an integral part of agriculture, can fall within these types of prohibitions, regardless of Lysander and the other case law that Mr. Bruin presented. As for a riding academy, the applicant says they're not having one, but then he says they're going to give lessons to boarders. The easement doesn't prohibit only a public riding academy. It says any riding academy, and that definition includes riding lessons, public or private. So what was intended by the equestrian rights when you read Articles 3 and 4 together consistently? What has gone on for the last 25 years? Private use of the property to ride and raise your own horses, but that's not what's being proposed. We will be submitting a letter in more detail. We hope that you will read it. It doesn't matter what your predecessors may have approved on other horse farms. We are here to discuss this application and its easement, its restrictive covenants, and other characteristics that may differ in time and circumstance from others. Do not fear pressure or litigation from the applicant. No matter how many well-connected people they trot out or pay as consultants, please listen to the people of Bridgehampton. We do not want to become the Wellington of the North. Our conservation agreements are strong, and they can prevail when tested in court, as we saw in First Blue and 625 Better. We just need you to stand with us and the town. We just need you and the town to stand with us and stand behind these agreements. And to quote one of our neighbors, say, "Whoa, Nelly," to this project.
Please, you have to be mindful of 3 minutes, or we're going to set a 3-minute buzzer, okay? Emma Clerman. If somebody decides not to speak because something's been said prior to you, that's fine.
I am Emma Clerman, and I live on Scuttle Hole Road, where I've lived for 25 years, 1 mile from this beautiful open field. And I go to Channing Vineyards, and I get my vegetables at Comfort Farm. I think this proposal is grotesque. As a resident, as an active member of the Peconic Land Trust, one of my concerns is not just about this field, but creating this exception can open the floodgates for other open spaces to be misused. And I'm very concerned about protecting what we have. It's very difficult to get these reserves either with CPF money or with Peconic Land Trust funds or private funds. And to grant this would open the floodgates and sets a terrible precedent for all our protected lands. Thank you.
George Fellows.
Hi, my name is George Fellows. I abut the property that we're talking about, and I want to talk to you not about the technicalities and the legalities. I want to talk to you as a neighbor. My wife and I bought this property over 15 years ago. We raised our children and our grandchildren. We did not want to move next to a commercial horse farm or horse establishment. The bucolic and rural nature of this town and that area specifically is what attracted us to be here. And the guarantees that we had both legally as well as contractually are what made the decision to move here. And like the previous speaker, violating those agreements and violating those assurances, if you will, I think would set a horrible precedent for this town and for the entire area. And I very strongly urge you, please, to reject this commercialization, if you will, of what is a beautiful, bucolic, rural homestead and not allow essentially a commercial factory next door. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Ginna.
I'm Peter Ganay, and
Ginna, sorry.
I'll try to be very brief. Ginna. I'm not an abutter or a neighbor. I didn't buy a house for $1 million or millions of dollars near this property. I was born and raised in Sag Harbor. I'm somebody who drives by this open space on Skull Hill Road, several times a week. And to me, it's just it's an example of what's so great about the kind of preservation easements and CPF purchases we've got out here. It's a precious piece of open space that's just in my day, some of the time passing through in this part of the world. And I used to walk on this property with my father, with our Labradors, back in the 1960s. It would be, I think, just a tragedy to see this open field covered up with the kinds of structures and activities that we've been hearing about here. I'm glad the two people before me mentioned the issue of precedent, because I think it's a terrible precedent. When we think about the CPF and we think about, making donations or selling easements to preserve open space, I think as a taxpayer, I'm horrified by the idea that that's what's happened to my tax, where my tax dollars have gone. And it also seems to me to discourage people who might want to sell easements or donate easements on their property if they think that, well, 25 years from now, somebody's just going to put a parking lot and 30,000 feet of barns and structures on it anyway. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Whitney Ellis. Whitney Ellis.
Hello. Thank you for the audience. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm very happy to be here. I live on Channing Vineyard with Francesca Channing. I've been living there for 10 years. And I grew up on a commercial horse farm in Essex County, Massachusetts. So I'll just say quickly a couple of things. That farm is 1,000 acres. We never have more than 50 horses. If one is lucky, it will end up at a place like this. This all becomes dirt. Another thing, any paddock, pasture, corral becomes dirt. Another thing of import is a groom for this quality of horse is way more akin to a sort of tutor. It's not an agricultural worker. It's someone who comes in for the season, blah, blah, blah. So those are a couple of things. I had a great relationship with Mr. Wayne Bruin when I moved here and got to know him professionally because we had to deal with a couple of things on the Channing property, and he had been engaged as counsel by Molly Channing and the Channing Daughters Winery, and he's exceptional counsel and was extremely helpful. And you know, while he is saying that this application is in compliance, I hope you understand that you have the opportunity to assess that and not to be told that, because what happens, and I saw this where I grew up, is that your opportunity, any municipality, resources are in short supply, and so your opportunity to have oversight of how a piece of land gets used is at the moment of the writing of this easement. With these things being approved, Lord knows what will be going on there ad infinitum into the future with any number of small little businesses and people doing their thing, because, you know, it's a great resource to the local community. The thing is this is not part of the local community. These workers, this need does not exist. This is not agricultural. This is a development. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. Please consider.
Thank you. Carlton Shade?
I'm Carlton Shade, live in Southampton Township, just a few minutes from this place. I'd like to thank the board for holding this hearing and the citizens here for their civic engagement. I'm speaking today because I'm strongly opposed to this proposed development. My reasons, besides the legal and aesthetic concerns, which are troubling enough, have to do with the health of the natural environment and the health of the people who live on the East End. So it's sort of a meta look at this. In the past decade, Southampton has experienced the most profound population increase of all the Long Island towns. And unsurprisingly then, this area has also experienced unrelenting destruction to its natural habitats, indeed more than most places in this country. The evidence is all around us. There's the ugly blight of the southern pine beetle. Since it was first discovered on Long Island in 2014, this invasive insect has killed thousands of pitch pines on the East End. There's the degradation of fisheries. In the 1980s, the Peconic Bay was the largest bay scallop fishery in the country. Since then, harvest of clams and scallops have decreased by 99%, in large part due to the excess nitrogen from untreated wastewater. There's the pollution of ponds and bays like Mecox Bay. Once places for leisure summer swims, they are no longer safe to swim in. Lake Agawam in Southampton is considered one of the most polluted ponds in the U.S. It is plagued by annual toxic blue-green algae. Then there are the ticks. The East End is considered a hot spot, if not the hottest spot in the U.S., for the terrible tick-borne diseases most of us here have endured. This is due to both the warmer winters from climate change and to the removal of almost all predators, like fox and bobcats, that naturally control the numbers of small mammals and deer that carry the ticks. What happened to the small predators? Human developments fragmented and destroyed their natural habitats. Perhaps most immediately dangerous to our health is the impact of development, quote unquote, on groundwater. Our drinking water on the East End, somebody's already mentioned, like all Long Island, is supplied by one source, the underground aquifer system. Anything toxic that is released into the environment filters down into our drinking water. And when we destroy the natural ecosystems that clean the water, the trees and grasses and eelgrasses and shellfish, we put ourselves in danger. And human development, especially large-scale commercial development like the proposed equestrian complex, is especially destructive. Taken together, what all this environmental degradation says is that there are already too many people and too many second homes and too many golf courses and too much development in general. For this reason, I believe the proposition for this large-scale development should be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Frankenbach.
I'm going to pass my 3 minutes on to
Thank you. That's helpful. Barish Rice or Barry Rice?
Yes, I'll pass mine on also.
Okay, great, that helps. Joe Viviani?
Good evening. I'm Joe Viviani. I live in 363 Paul's Lane in Bridgehampton, also a member of the Bridgehampton Civic Association. I'll be very brief. I'm concerned that this proposal is not consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, which clearly prioritizes the preserving of agricultural land and the rural character of Scuttle Hole Road and Lumber Lane. This is one of the town's key agricultural corridors, and over many years, the public has invested heavily in farmland preservation through the Community Preservation Fund. In this area, also receives a significant agricultural tax benefits. Those benefits are meant to support true agricultural use. If special exceptions allow more intensive use while those tax benefits remain in place, it weakens the integrity of the town's farmland preservation work. I'm also concerned about the scale of development. So I respectfully ask the board to carefully consider the long-term impacts on agricultural land and rural character before granting approval. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Marianne Eddy? Marianne Eddy?
She left.
She left, okay. Peter Zamiska? Yes, please.
I'm cutting my notes down to just a few.
Good.
Please ask yourselves, as you ponder this decision, honestly, who really benefits from this approval? Who exactly? We the people? And how? How would it further the support and strengthen the spirit of long-established zoning law to preserve open spaces? We sincerely hope you enforce our trust in you to oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Averon?
Good evening. I support what Peter just said. I'm speaking this evening on behalf of the Bridgehampton Civic Association. I live on Sea Farm Lane off of Lumber Lane next to a protected ag reserve. I'm the vice president of the Sea Farm Homeowners Association, which is made up of 54 homes. We believe the planning board erred in accepting the applicant's assertion this is a type 2 SECRA action. First, we believe more than 10 acres are being disturbed. The applicant simply moved some lines. The land as it existed now is thick with natural long grasses and other wild, high, and uneven vegetation. SECRA defines disturbance very broadly, and if the applicant is planning to clear any part of the existing natural vegetation or move around or grade soil to make way for a ring, even out a pasture, or create a trail or bridle path, or facilitate construction or move in machinery, or even to put in fences, they are disturbing that area, and it must be counted. As a side note, our area, Lumber Lane, floods. The community floods. So we already have issues with flooding there, just as an add-on. Second, the planning board should really consider whether this project even falls within type 2 exception for farm buildings, rather than just accept the applicant's claim that it does. The exception is not for all farm buildings. The buildings must be consistent with generally accepted principles of farming. It is hard to see how New York could have contemplated this type of massive condo-like development when they enacted that exception. At that time, farm buildings were not massive structures and developments as proposed here. Housing consisted of bunkhouse or trailer-type housing with limited or no septic systems. The sheer number of septic systems being proposed by this applicant is equivalent to having developed this property residentially, perhaps even more so given the density of townhouses, none of which is consistent with generally accepted principles of farming or the spirit of the SECRA exception. As such, the proposal, taken in its entirety, does not fall within the Type 2 definition, and it is our belief that the Planning Board should have classified it as either Type 1 or as an unlisted action. Because the parcel is within the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, we believe the Planning Board must also consider the impact on the aquifer, the displacement of the rich Bridgehampton land, and sunshade impact on neighboring properties. I just want to add and deviate from this. That is already a problem, the area, for the police, because I would say a dozen times a year, many of the homeowners in my area call the non-emergency police to alert them that people are speeding up and down Lumber and Skull Hole. We've reported it so many times, and I think that the police now are going to have some software to see what's going on there. But to put another exit and then house families and have all this traffic and trailer traffic is just, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Susskind? Dennis?
Oh, thanks.
No. Okay, you're on the list. Nina Channing?
I have a short statement of my own, and then my mother, Molly Channing, also gave me a short prepared statement, so I will read both of those to you. Good evening. My name is Nina Channing. My family owns and operates Channing Daughters Winery, which is directly adjacent to 819 Lumber Lane. I was born and raised on the property. I grew up on this land, so this is not abstract to me. This is my home. We love this place. This is my nephew, Augustine, who wanted to come up here tonight as well. He also lives on the property adjacent to the proposed development. We love this land. We take our responsibility as stewards of it very seriously. For decades, my family has farmed in Bridgehampton, invested here, paid taxes here. We grow grapes in the soil using sustainable practices that protect groundwater, soil health, airflow, and biodiversity. We have been good stewards and responsible members of this community. Even as Bridgehampton has seen enormous development and transformed around us, we have worked constructively with the town and with our neighbors. We have followed the rules, and we have relied on others to do the same. The parcel under consideration is permanently protected farmland. In 2001, the town used public funds, our tax dollars, to purchase the development rights so that this land would remain agricultural forever. My family has paid into that tax base for more than 50 years. We've supported farmland preservation because we believed permanent meant permanent. What is now proposed would require the large-scale raising and re-engineering of that ground, 70,000 square feet of structures, indoor arenas, internal roads, parking areas, manure, infrastructure, and transient worker housing. This is not incidental agricultural activity. It is an intensive commercial build-out on land that was preserved specifically to avoid this exact kind of transformation. There has been an attempt to classify housing for horse grooms as agricultural labor housing, something that I believe stretches the definition of agricultural labor beyond recognition. Grooms caring for privately owned show horses are employees of a luxury recreational enterprise. At a time when our town faces a genuine housing crisis, when essential workers, teachers, firemen, police officers struggle to live in the community that they serve, it is indefensible, in my eyes, to create an exception in our farmland protections to subsidize the labor costs of a luxury corporation.
I'm just going to ask one more time if you can, I know your feelings, but please just keep it down. Nina, go ahead.
If we allow the definitions of our laws to be manipulated this way, farmland protections across the East End lose their meaning. When loopholes are opened this wide, the laws and covenants that protect the preserved farmland become toothless. If permanently protected land can be reinterpreted like this, then no preserved parcel is secure. I also want to talk for a minute about winemaking today. So viticulture and grape growing, which we have done on this land directly adjacent to this for 40 years, depends on balance. Sunlight, water, drainage, soil composition, and wind flow determine vine health and fruit quality. Grapes are uniquely fragile. This is not like growing potatoes. The scale of construction proposed here would block the sun from our view and alter how light moves across our vines throughout the year. The earth moving and infrastructure would change how water drains through our soils and how air circulates across our fields. Those changes would fundamentally alter our farm, our operation, and our wine production. An independent Cornell agricultural expert has warned that the scale of disturbance proposed here poses serious risks to neighboring properties. For us, as a local business, those risks are existential. This decision is not technical. It is foundational to our business and our family's life here. These preserves mean something. They represent a public promise paid for with taxpayer dollars that certain land will remain agricultural. If that promise can be undone through reinterpretation and legal maneuvering, it is not a promise at all. For me, this is home. For our family, it's our livelihood. And every taxpayer who believed in protecting farmland, this decision will show them whether those protections still stand. I urge you to enforce the deed restrictions and to require a full environmental review. Thank you.
Do you want to read Molly?
Yes. This is from my mother, Molly Channing. As the primary owner of Channing Daughters Vineyard and Winery, I am writing to implore the board to reject the above application to build an equestrian complex and housing on protected agricultural reserve abutting our vineyards. We planted our grapes in the early 1980s and have operated our small winery since the early 1990s. Like many other local farmers, we have been blessed with soil that rivals any other in the country for growing crops and vines and flowers. We chose our location based on its proximity to the glacial terminal moraine, that big hill. It's not so big, but the prime soil composition and accessibility to the prevailing winds that come off of that hill. As you may know, our friend and fellow vintner, Lyle Greenfield, established Bridgehampton Winery less than a mile away from us at around the exact same time, but his vines never thrived. They succumbed to a combination of root rot and leaf mold because he was surrounded by buildings which prevented sufficient airflow to the vines. His business was ruined, and he was out quite a pretty penny. Aside from the obvious and compelling reasons this equestrian complex is totally inappropriate for the area and frankly prohibited by a development agreement on the parcel, it is also an environmental calamity for the soils, the groundwater, any future agricultural uses, and protected scenic vistas. The proposed complex of barns, paddocks, riding areas, stalls, residential housing will critically impact the crucial airflow and wind patterns that our business relies on, not to mention the runoff from equine operations, manure pits, and the like, polluting our fields. My family and the families of my vineyard partners and workers have a deep commitment to the town of Southampton. Our children have gone to school here. Our grandchildren go to school here. We serve on local boards. We have a large group of loyal wine club members who treasure our serene setting and sustainable winemaking practices. Our commitment to preserving and protecting the beautiful land around us extends to our own property, most of which we have put into the Peconic Land Trust and which we hope to preserve forever, never to be developed. It is truly devastating to think that the stewards of Southampton Town might not honor their promise to protect our natural resources and open spaces, which are a major reason why the majority of us has chosen to spend our lives here in the first place. Please listen to the voices of your community who rely on your judgment and commitment to the livelihoods and the health of our businesses.
Thank you very much. Laura Weisbart. Laura Weisbart.
That's a tough one to follow. So I'll be super brief. I'm a new mom here in Bridgehampton. Our backyard is actually the Channing vineyard, and they're lovely neighbors. And I can't imagine how catastrophic this would be to their beautiful vineyard. And also, as a new mom, you know, I felt compelled to come here. I have an 18-month-old. I missed bedtime tonight. I have a 2-month-old who's with a sitter. I really hope you do give the attention that this deserves for the environmental impacts. I'm incredibly concerned about what this could do to our water quality. As we plan to live here, we're year-round here. We plan to grow. My husband's here. We plan to raise our growing family here. And so I appreciate your consideration and your time. Thank you.
Martha Green. Martha Green?
My name is Martha Green. My husband, Robin Saunders, and I live on Lumber Lane. We've lived there for 50 years. We were married there 40-some-odd years ago. I'm going to cede my time, but we haven't talked about the traffic, which has become much of an accident black spot on Scuttle Hole and Lumber Lane. It's building and building. We've not been able to get out of our houses in the summer sometimes, and I really think with the 4 houses that are built across the street, it's enough. It's filthy, it's dusty, and it's enough. Thank you.
Thanks. Charles Plato?
Thank you. I'm Charles Plato, and I live across the street on Scuttle Hole Road, and I first became aware of this whole project. You might remember I came in as the only speaker at the first public hearing because I saw a sign when I was walking my dog. And I walk my dog by this field every day, except in the snow. You've heard all the statements from the lawyers and community residents. Very clearly, a seeker review is required for all the reasons they stated. The development, we do not believe, is permitted under the development agreement for all the reasons stated. It's not for me to repeat all those. And given the limited time, I just want to correct a few presentations to the board, which I think the board should be aware of. First of all, this comment about Steve Klein using this 20, 30 acres as a equestrian facility for the last 25 years. I see it from my window. Steve Klein has 2 or 3 horses that he brings over to exercise and then takes back to the stable on his property. So this property is not used. It's used for the purpose it was intended. His horses can, and a few riders can ride on that property. That's all. It's not fair to suggest that this has been used in the way it's now being presented. A second point is, I was at the initial public hearing, and I was probably the only one who was there, again, because I didn't know any better. I think I asked the question, I have no idea what's going on, please tell me. And the proponent got up and spoke to you, and it's in the record. And she said, and this I believe is a quote, "This is my passion. These are my horses. This is not going to be a commercial facility." And then her lawyer came and amended it before the board and said, "Oh yes, this is going to be a commercial facility. I'm going to bring in outside boarders and their trainers, and I'm going to charge them money to keep their horses here and ride in my arena and ride on these paddocks." Also, it was represented at that initial time that Channing Daughters endorses this. Channing Daughters says, "No problem, we're happy to have you." Well, you just heard the most eloquent statement from Channing Daughters, and my understanding is that the proponent went over to the wine tasting and said, "We may be your next door neighbors. What do you think of that?" And someone said, that would be nice. Obviously, it's a major, major, major concern to the adjacent landowner. So those are just a couple of the concerns. The last one I will raise is, once again, as one of our first speakers, our attorneys, reminded the board, in November, you had a resolution that said a secret review is required. There were 23 acres of disturbed land, or disturbed soils. With the stroke of a pen, and at a hearing, I got in a little trouble because I knew I wasn't allowed to speak at the planning board meeting, so at the working meeting, so I apologize. They moved a couple of bales of hay, and Mr. Bruin represented to this board that these 26 show horses would not in any way, shape, or form disturb the paddocks. There would be no adjustment necessary, no effect on the soil necessary. That was the representation to the board. You've heard from the lawyers, you've heard from the experts, you've heard from the community. I'm not a horse person, my daughter is, that there is no way on earth that those paddocks are not going to be disturbed by these horses. Therefore, as a simple matter, what the soil conservation experts said is there's going to be 5 or 6 plus acres of additional beyond the 9.3 they managed to create with a stroke of a pen, which will be disturbed. And therefore, before the board even reaches these ever so important development issues that you've heard so much about, there must be a secret review. The board, I think, was misled in being asked to reverse its position and not require a secret review. You now have both orally and you'll have certainly in writing extensive expert documentation that mandates a secret review. Thank you.
Thank you. We have quite a number of people who are coming in on Zoom, but I've come to the end of.
Can I just say one thing? I took that list, and that's why I was last.
Yeah.
I believe after I came in here.
Well, that's why
there were some people who wanted to speak.
That's why I'm calling out. So how many more people would like to speak? Just raise your hand. Yes? Okay, 2 people. Okay, please.
3. You got Dennis?
3.
3, yeah.
Right now, thank you. My name is Darren Eidenberg. My husband and I owned a home in Bridgehampton on Tiffany Way off of Mitchell Lane for almost 15 years. And we spent the last many years in Aspen, but just moved back with the intention of planting roots back in New York and then buying a home again in Bridgehampton. Our decision to return was grounded in a connection to New York and the East End, and our deep appreciation for Bridgehampton's open vistas, agricultural heritage, and carefully preserved rural character. It is with that intention I come here today from New York City, despite not owning a home here right now. I'm very concerned when I think back to all of our memories driving past this particular location. This is a field that fueled me with the character, the essence of what I think of Bridgehampton, and is why we so seek to come back here. And I think for everyone in Bridgehampton, south of the highway, north of the highway, there's a distinct feel that I think we've all carefully worked to preserve. I think that my letter to you reflects so many of the concerns put forth today, but I want to present just as someone who's an outsider coming back in, massive concern, especially when doing diligence on behalf of, or in preparation for this meeting, and particularly around Topping Field. I think we know it's south of the highway, which was, I think, in the last 5 years, on the verge of being purchased for development. And there were a number of our friends who got involved, just like this, to stop that. And when we peeled back the onion, I was told that it took a big, wealthy donor to come in and just put down money, $25 million, and then I guess the Peconic Land Trust matched it. But that was sad to me. That's sad to me that it takes someone with big pockets to come in and make a statement. I don't know that everyone in this room can put together dollars, peel out their pocket and money and stick it in a jar and stop this, but that would be a terrible thing if that's what it's going to take in Bridgehampton to keep what we all love. And so maybe that's the only new thing I can add, but that was some recent diligence and really important to be said today. The rest of my thoughts are in this letter, which I'll hand to you.
You could just submit
But thank you
it.
very much.
Thank
And
you.
thanks for being here.
Someone raised a hand over here to speak. There was someone here who wanted to speak?
Hi, Dennis. I'm doing well. Good morning, everyone. I'm Larry Carlson. I was the second interloper outside of my farming friends up on Scuttle Hole Road. There was only one other guy back 50 years ago who was crazy enough to move up north of the highway, north of the railroad tracks, and that was some fellow that became a good friend of mine named Walter Chady. Sorry, he's no longer with us. But I had some other neighbors. I had Ray Wisnowski and his father Remy, and Charlie Vanderveer, whose property's next to mine, along with the Wisnowskis, who are right across the street from this. Three brothers still farm all that open land. Tony Tiska, a farmer, lived on the other side of me. And beyond that was a fellow named Sayer Baldwin, who is the only guy who kind of changed things there, but it wasn't so bad. It's still open. He sold a 200-acre farm there back when I first got there too, and it became a golf course after he sold it. And then there's the Falkowskis, who are across the street from me, John and his brother Tom. They had that farm stand right there by my house on the traffic circle there. And then beyond that's Breezy Hill Farm, and beyond that's another big Wisnowski place. If you drive down this whole thing, if we look at this historically in perspective, it was all supposed to be conserved and be this beautiful thing, which it still is to a great degree. Most all of those, with a few exceptions, are still doing that. Charlie died, Tony died, but the land is still there. And if you look into the records, which I would encourage you to do, you'll see that most of that is all either deeded back to the county farmland, Peconic Land Trust, several other designations that have been mentioned today. And my good friend Walter and his family, as they've already pointed out, put most of their land into a Peconic Land Trust. And so I'll just stand here today and just tell you, I've been there from the beginning, way before everybody else. God bless them who've come up there. And I used to wave to Walter at night across the potato fields there. When we turned out our lights, we could still see each other. And so the taxes that, part of what I did when this whole thing came up way back with your predecessors was I looked into that deeply and found out that that word that was used tonight by Nina, that it was, preserved. It was going to be preserved, and I was happy to pay those taxes. Just like I've been happy to pay taxes for almost 50 years to educate a lot of public school children, where the majority of my taxes go. And enough has been said by everybody else. I feel I was going to go much further into all that, but I just want you to know that these are all neighbors. And I talked to Ray today at some length, who has the big, huge open spaces right across the street. He's down in Florida, wishes he could be here. And he's the one that signed the petition along with his brothers.
He submitted a letter to us.
Yeah,
Right.
good. And, well, I knew he probably would, and I just called him to confirm that he did, and he said he did, so.
He did.
Thanks for giving me your time, and
Thank you, Larry.
I don't think we should review anything. I think we should just say no.
So have we covered everyone? Did I see? Did you want to speak?
I think it was actually Ed, his brother, who submitted the letter, but it was on behalf of the family.
Oh, right, yes, Ed.
Jay Schneiderman, thank you for inviting me up. So I came here tonight primarily to listen to the concerns of neighbors, but also on behalf of Gabby Morris, who is hoping to build a horse farm at 118 Lumber Lane, a piece of property that she believes has the as-of right to build a horse farm, and believes that that is something that was contemplated when the development rights were sold. And Gabby, I know, loves this piece of property. It's her dream to have a horse farm there. For 24 years, I served in elected office, including town supervisor. During that time, I was directly involved in preserving thousands of acres of open space and farmland. The original Purchase of Development Rights program was not designed to freeze land in perpetuity as vacant fields. It was designed to keep farmers farming. The town acted to prevent farmland from being subdivided into residential estates and instead limited those lands to agricultural uses as defined by New York State Ag and Markets Law. The Lumber Lane property might otherwise have yielded, under today's zoning, around 15 homes. But those rights were sold in 2001. In exchange, the land was permanently restricted to agricultural uses, and the easement specifically allows equestrian uses and related agricultural structures, including housing for ag labor. I don't think, get in with this board the need for housing for workers. It's an extreme crisis throughout the East End. So, and we've seen all the fights that ensue whenever a property is slated for potential development. There was some testimony earlier about a Bridgehampton case of a ag reserve. And that ag reserve did say no residential in the ag reserve. This ag reserve specifically says that ag labor housing is permitted in this reserve. There's quite a distinction there. There's no question. It's right there in that easement. In 2005, the town acquired development rights on the Frankenbach property, now Brightside Farm, a similarly sized property on Deerfield Road. In 2012, this board, and I think some of you may have been on the board at the time, in 2012, this board approved a substantial horse farm there, including a large indoor arena, larger than this, and facilities supporting more horses than what is proposed here. Interestingly, the Lumber Lane easement more clearly and explicitly supports equestrian uses than the easement governing the Brightside Farm property. During my tenure as supervisor, the town created an enhanced easement model in certain cases where it sought to limit farmland strictly to food production. That required the expenditure of millions of additional public dollars. Those enhanced restrictions were specifically designed to prevent higher value agricultural uses, like wineries, nurseries, and horse farms, from displacing food production. The Lumber Lane property was never subject to that enhanced restriction. It remains governed by the standard agricultural development rights easement. Agricultural operations, by their nature, require structures. Across the town, preserved farms contain barns, silos, equipment garages, greenhouses, storage buildings, and even in some cases, farm stands. An agricultural use does not mean an empty field. It means productive land supported by the structures necessary to operate that agricultural enterprise. As the planning board and our attorney, Mr. Bruin, has laid out in his submissions all the reasons why this meets the special exception standards. That's up to you to determine whether it does or does not. But if it does, this is an as-of-right use. Whether people don't want it, I'm sure they'd love to see an open field. I get that. But a property owner has a right to develop that property. Mr. Klein, who's the owner here, Stephen Klein, has the right to those uses that are outlined in the Ag and Markets Law. That's just the way it is. I may not want the empty lot next to me developed, but that property owner has certain rights. And, I know that Gabby will do a great job in terms of being a good neighbor, and, we'll certainly listen to all of the concerns that are raised. And I know she hopes that this board will look upon this application kindly and try to do its best to balance all the interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yes.
Kevin?
He answered.
I didn't hear him. How many people do you have on Zoom?
I have 4 hands up right now, but
Yes,
there's
4
a total of 41 people
Okay, can
on
you
the-
start with the first?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Robert Gold. I live at 80 Becky's Path, Bridgehampton. Much has been said tonight, and I will be brief. The owner cites the covenant's permission for equestrian use, but the same document prohibits a public riding academy and limits use to private purposes. And this board's own 2002 condition prohibited dwellings on this reserve. Simply stated, you cannot override your own recorded conditions with a special exemption. The application should be rejected. Please protect what we all love about Bridgehampton. And thank you really so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You can bring up the next, Kevin?
bringing them in.
Yeah, if you have any papers, just please give them to. Janet?
Hollinger.
Hi, my name is Janet Donahoe Ollinger, and I'm here to say that you should strike down this proposal. I live at 32 Grouse Lane in Bridgehampton. Allowing this project would set a dangerous precedent, weakening farm protections across all of Southampton. This land was permanently protected to remain open space and farmland, allowing a commercial equestrian complex with housing violates all obligations to all farmers and neighbors and taxpayers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kevin, next, please. You're muted.
Can't hear you.
Sorry.
There you go.
My name is Peter Clark. I'm a resident around the corner at Becky's Path. And I will comment on the very eloquent neighbors that have spoken today. My view is this is an abomination. And I want the planning board to go home tonight. And when you put your head on the pillow and you think about this meeting, I want you to think about the word that one of our neighbors said, and that's grotesque. This is a grotesque violation of the trust that all of our neighbors have put in the process and in the law. And I really hope that you, as trusted members of the planning board, will do the right thing and deny this in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Peter.
Cartoon.
Good evening, Chairperson LaFaro and members of the Planning Board. My name is Greg Goucher, and my home is on 805 Lumber Lane. And to be clear, I do oppose this project. First, I want to just thank you for your time and your service to our community. We understand that the issues before you require you to consider planning issues, environmental impacts, community concerns, and important legal obligations, and we appreciate the seriousness with which you approach that responsibility. My wife and I own the property immediately adjacent to 819 Lumber Lane. We purchased our 2-acre parcel in 2008 and built our home in direct reliance on the recorded 2001 purchase of development rights agreement between Tater Fields LLC and the town, the easement that the town purchased with public funds. The 33-acre agricultural reserve forms our primary view. It defines our sunsets and the rural agricultural character that led us to make a substantial long-term investment in this community. The proposal before you is not consistent with that easement, period. The easement expressly prohibits commercial uses. While agricultural production of crops and livestock are permitted, a fee-based horse boarding and training enterprise of this scale is plainly a commercial operation such an operation is deemed permissible, the commercial prohibition in the easement is rendered meaningless. The easement allows only for narrowly defined housing for agricultural labor directly tied to farm production. Multiple residential buildings serving a boarding facility do not meet that definition. More importantly, 2002 subdivision approval stipulated that there will be no dwellings on the agricultural reserve, none. That is in directly conflict with this proposal. Finally, and I cut a lot of this out, finally, the scale of construction defeats the easement's core purpose, preserving prime agricultural soils and scenic open space. The town paid nearly $1.9 million to secure those protections. We relied on that recorded easement when we invested in our home. If it can now be interpreted to allow this level of commercial and residential intensification, it undermines public confidence in the town's preservation program. We respectfully ask that you enforce the easement according to its plain language and purpose and deny this application. Thank you for listening.
Kevin, anyone else?
Yes, 3 more.
Got a couple more? Three more?
He said 2 more.
Hi, good evening. I will try and be brief. I am so grateful for all the speakers before me who oppose this development and who, if you need to proceed, urge that an environmental review be conducted. I'm going to try and not repeat too much, but I just want to highlight that the town spent millions of dollars to mitigate excess nitrogen in our ponds and bays. So approving this high-intensity development project would be so counterproductive to the town's effort to try and improve the water quality, not just for drinking water, but also in the other bodies of water where the excess nitrogen was harming wildlife or marine life. Second, my husband, who just spoke, and I examined this piece of land that we built our home on very carefully, relying very carefully on the language in the development agreement, the easement, the zoning laws, and respecting that we need to honor the owner's right to sell the land and a buyer's right to do what is permissible under written agreements. I, as a neighbor to Channing Daughters and a community member of Bridgehampton, just hope that you'll seriously consider the livelihood of Channing Daughters. It's not only our neighbor, it's such a cornerstone of our Bridgehampton community and the character of our community and perhaps even the economy.
Thank you. Can you give me your name, please, for the record?
Sophia Goucher.
Can you spell that last name?
Gushee. And I did submit a written letter too.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was her. Oh, scary.
Excuse me, is it my turn?
Yes, it is.
Okay, sorry. I'm trying to do this on my iPad. I've never done it before. That's because I would like to be there in person. But I can't, which goes to the point, before I get into anything else, beyond the beautiful things that have already been said by my fellow neighbors and residents. I do not understand why you are having such an important meeting in the depth of winter, when most of the naturally concerned residents are not around. I credit the Bridgehampton Civic for getting the word out so that as many people have participated as have shown up. But again, why would you do it now if you're interested in really finding out what people feel? To me, it just obscures the whole process. And I would really encourage you to do it
in season when people are around. But beyond that, first thing I want to say is I think that the use of the legitimate labor housing issue as a fig leaf for what is clearly a luxury commercial enterprise is shameful. And I think that should be clear to everybody who's listening to this presentation. And I think it points to the bad faith character of this whole project. But without laboring that, the lawyer for the applicant described the field as an open, what did he say, an open mode lawn? That is not an accident. That is because it is an ag reserve. That is the point. That is what we want. That is what we're trying to protect. A commercial enterprise is a commercial enterprise, whether you call it a horse farm in quotes or a unicorn factory. I have no doubt that Gabby has a dream. You know, I hope she finds a place for it. This is not that place. This is obviously a commercial enterprise that is explicitly prohibited by the Ag Preserve designation. You've heard many more eloquent explanations of that, so I'll leave it there. There certainly should be no special exemption for the destruction of open, protected open space, especially for this kind of vanity project. Thank you.
Can I have your name, please, for the record?
Oh, sure. My name is Gasper Tringali, and I live at 142 Corwith Avenue in Bridgehampton, and we have for the past 25 years.
Thank you. Kevin?
Last person. That seems like all.
David. Chris?
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes, my name is David Chris. My wife and I live at 315 Lumber Lane. For the past 20 years, I've served as the chairman of the zoning board in the village of Larchmont. So I very much appreciate and thank you as members of the board, because I know very much what it's like to be put in a position of having to make these very challenging decisions, and also to be sitting in these meetings at 8 o'clock at night. I think you're fortunate. We actually don't start till 7:30, so our meetings tend to go sometimes 11, 12 o'clock. But most importantly, I think that this is, to state the obvious, this is a very significant application that you are being asked to make a decision about. And I simply don't think that you have the necessary information in order to be able to fairly evaluate this application. And the reason I think you don't is because the applicant originally came in with a proposal that was very clearly subject to a full secret review. And then they submitted a new application, which they managed to shoehorn into avoiding the necessity of the full secret review. And the board, I think, I wasn't at that meeting, I didn't see the minutes, but seems that perhaps without full information, accepted that. And I think you need, I would hope, you don't need to do anything, but I would hope that you would go back and revisit that, because you've heard, from members of the community, there's 260 members who've signed a petition. The state, as I said, this is a hugely important application, one of the more important ones that I'm sure you'll hear this year. And to make this decision without a full secret review, without really understanding the environmental impact that this has upon the community, I think would be a real mistake. And I don't think you'll be serving yourselves well, and I don't think you'll be serving the community well, unless you have all of the facts that you need to make a proper and well-reasoned decision. And I thank you for all the efforts that you make.
Thank you. Kevin, is that it?
That's all for Zoom.
Okay. So we've come to the end of that. I encourage you, please, to, if you've made us, we've gotten many letters online, but if you've presented new information, please submit that to us or submit hard copies so we can review it. We're going to leave it. Dwayne, did you want to say anything?
No, I think we've received a lot of comments. Everybody has an opportunity to speak. I think the next step would be for you to close the hearing and keep a written record open.
Well, there are people who couldn't come because of storm and weather, et cetera, so we are going to keep the hearing open and move forward from there. So I encourage you all to send in your information, send in your letters, particularly the attorneys that were more detailed, okay? And I thank you all for coming out in such, it was very hard to park here, I know, behind the snowdrifts. It took me about 30 minutes to get a spot. So,
Just to be clear, you're keeping the record open?
I'm
or
keeping the hearing open.
So then you're going to give it an adjourn date?
yeah, we'll give it an adjourn date. What have we got? Brenna?
Oh, as far as the next available meeting?
Kristen,
Kristen has the record.
The 26th has 2 hearings on it. Of March? Yeah.
but April,
March.
we got 2 hearings on.
Yeah, we have 2. What about the April 1st, the first one in April?
I mean, that also answers the question about whether
March 12th has a few big ones. The cannabis.
Do you want us to email you that? You want us to email
Yeah,
you?
that's good.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's probably what I
That's okay.
she's probably just
She can
as
do
good,
it, yeah.
Okay.
If you give her a card with your
April,
email.
April 11th?
April 9th.
April 9th. Okay, we're adjourning until the next public hearing will be April 9th. Okay? Yeah, yes. Yes.
yes.
Is there a resolution?
Give them to Preda.
Well, yeah, give it to Preda.
Jackie, motion, second.
Motion for adjourn to April 8th?
Yes.
9th by George, second by Gloria, and all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, abstentions, 4 in favor, 2 absent, 1 vacancy. Okay, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn by George, second by Gloria, and all in favor.
Yay.
4 in favor, 2 absent, and 1 vacancy.